Thanks so much. I appreciate this. I have mixed emotions about being the first one out of the gates. Monday morning is always a trick on these things, so thanks everybody who got in late last night, had a couple cocktails, and made it up today. I also want to say thank you for all of your purchases, every single one of them. And I'm excited that this event is actually happening after our fourth quarter earnings results, so maybe I can answer better questions today than just say no thank you. All right, yeah, so that's exactly what I want to talk about, and I'm super excited to be here, and was excited to see that there was a lot of really interesting themes within the responses that we had to those questions. So it feels like a lot of us are on the same track. So for us, I'm just going to kind of talk about this journey with data that we've had. So obviously, as a retailer, we sit on a wealth of information, and we really took a journey a few years ago to spend a bit more time with that data and to look at ways that we could leverage it in more impactful marketing approaches. So that really all starts with segmentation for us. So as you guys know, years ago we saw consumers as universal, right? These are just people in the marketplace. And so what we did was really dig deep into what we had available to us to start to identify those folks as individuals. And as you're able to start to do that, that's when we were able to start grouping them into these segments that we found and really start to hone in on these different groups that we saw across our box. So this is a breakdown of kind of how that spending behavior by segment came through our stores. And then we thought about, all right, what are the folks that we can really lean into that will have the most profound impact for us? So for us, that's this group that we call high-touch tech fans. And those folks really represent the center of our bullseye. Yes, they're interesting. Yes, they're into technology. Yes, they've got a nice influx of millennials, so we're looking to the future. All of those things are absolutely true. Disposable income, all great attributes that you're looking for as you're defining that core segment. But one of the things that really set them aside for us as we're trying to think about how to differentiate ourselves within the marketplace is this idea for help, this idea that they want to be part of this technology solution. They know a lot themselves, but they want to be able to have a resource with them, a partner with them that will talk about that. In some instances, somebody to give them a push, but in some other conversations, just somebody to validate what they're thinking. So we love these folks, but that's me kind of telling you in my words. Let me share with you their story in their own words.
My dad used to say, God would surf with the devil if the waves were good enough. Doing that with my son is really a blessing.
I can't think of any other way I'd rather spend my life than this right now.
There's something about being out in the middle of nowhere, and what you're seeing is not what you saw yesterday.
The journey from where I started and where I am, it took a lot of dedication, it took a lot of hard work, it took a lot of sacrifice.
When I tell people what I really do in college, they're surprised. I got a full ride for playing video games.
We have a unique relationship with technology. It adds to our ability to do more.
It allows me to stay connected without giving up my love for flying.
I started the blog to keep in touch with my family and my friends.
But we have thousands of people that read each blog post now.
I love being able to share my passion with people around the world, no matter where I am.
Think about moves that are more, traditional.
Our job is to go out and to have fun and to adventure. So it's neat to have Best Buy who has that passion on the technology side, and we are able to keep focused on all the possibilities.
So it's really fun for us to start to see the dynamic of these individuals coming to life. And so it's great that we've identified this group of people. Now how do we begin to have different stories with them? So let me walk you through a traditional Hollywood script, all right? Any good story starts with an unfortunate event. A lost connection with a family, an existential crisis ensues, an epic struggle makes its way through this kind of story arc. an improbable triumph, and ultimately a reunion with loved ones, and a stronger sense of self and gratitude as a result. Does anybody know, any guesses on what movie this is? It's Disney. I heard Disney. All right, so Finding Dory, right? All right, great. It's also the story of Deadpool, if you think about it. Now, what would happen if we deliver that Deadpool message to the wrong audience? It would be tragic, right? It would be tragic. So then, now we have to think about how do we combine these insights, the audiences, and put them together in a way that's actionable for us. So what we did, and as you look at the dynamic, it really is about this evolution of, for us especially as a retailer, pushing out what we wanted to sell, when we wanted to sell it, no matter what the consumer was interested in. It really is an exciting time for marketers, right? Because this is an opportunity where we can deliver customer needs on their terms when they want it, when they need it. And that's really about the focus of what we're trying to do as we shift that story. So we took all of our own proprietary data. We added that with all consumer insights, third-party research, and put that all together in a database that we affectionately call Athena, who just happens to be the goddess of wisdom. I'm guessing there's probably a handful of other companies that named their database this. But so as you think of our Athena database and all the attributes that go into it, I mean, just all about volume of customer identification, ways to kind of cut this data and also pull in triggers real time from environment or consumer behavior so that we're reacting to all of those components in the moment. So, for example, how does that start to come to life? We might know that it's spring. Spring is in the air, at least in some areas of the country. And so pollen counts start to go up. So we'll deliver you an email that's maybe about air purification. We might know that you're about to get a week full of rain, and so we'll send you some pertinent content on that. We might know that you're in Dallas, Texas, and we have a whole different kind of event coming to you where we want to show you and invite you to see our tech home in action. So we build out environments like this where we allow customers to come through. So we're able to pull those triggers through and deliver those messages based on that Athena targeting and those real-time triggers. So let's look at how that kind of comes to life from email as we look at the process for maybe a digital imaging or a camera consumer. So it starts with discovery. So maybe we'll send you some things because we know that this might be something that you're interested in. Try to get you inspired. Then well-timed deals to help you convert. And then once you get into that purchasing mode, this is some opportunities to make sure that you're making the most out of that camera decision. And then follow up with you along the way to make sure, as we know you hit kind of those troughs in that consumer experience, that we're providing content that helps you kind of pick that back up and keep you engaged. Now, that's a lot about email, and you guys are all, a lot of you represent the media industry as well. You understand that targeting doesn't have to stop with that particular CRM channel. So here's an example of where we took Instagram content from influencers out in the environments and brought that into a digital experience that we drove traffic to. So we were able to leverage that content and deliver it through CNET, through social channels like Facebook, as well as Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. So this really allowed us to deliver that dynamic experience where consumers were when they were looking for it, based on all those triggers that we were talking about. And we know, and you guys know, this drives results, the results that we're really excited about. So opens on emails, increase in digital media return, web traffic is up, increase in sales, all good numbers. So why wouldn't we keep doing this, right? This is great, but it's all kind of part of this momentum, part of that journey. And what for us as marketers this has allowed us to do is kind of change the dynamic of how we talk about marketing within our own company. So we know that there are a lot of pressures on us that we're always looked at as a cost center. We're always an expense. Well, we're shifting that conversation to be about a profit center as well. Now that we're able to take all of these trigger points that we know within, it used to be that we couldn't figure out the impact of anything that was happening, whether that was something that was a proprietary vehicle, earned media moments that we have, or a paid media campaign. by leveraging the way that we've connected that data internally and pump it back through that Athena database, we're able to start to isolate and connect these trigger points, ultimately driving that attribution into revenue, traffic, and profit. And so for us, that really changes that conversation. And we're start to be able to influence our media buys real time and our media decisions based on how we're seeing that performance. We're also able to obviously see that cost come down and ultimately our return go up. So that dynamic internally changes that conversation significantly. And we really draw that back to this ability to target customers more directly. So obviously, as you guys know, an anonymous customer would just be somebody we don't know anything about. Anonymous CE intenders would be more kind of traditional, a more traditional media buy or media approach. Anonymous and known behavior, so that's somebody who's maybe browsed or cookies that we're attaching to that traffic, and ultimately would be this identified as when all those things come together and we're able to leverage that database to activate on it. And so this changes the conversation for us significantly internally. It also gives us this huge opportunity to shape a personalization strategy that we've never been able to do before. So for us, that growth continues to increase exponentially year over year. But that's not the easiest thing really to start to scale. So for example, today we can send an email, we can send 80 million unique emails to customers based on that Athena database. Now that's the exact same as the population of Germany. So as you know, that's pretty tricky. So the way I think about it is sandwiches, right? Follow me. And it's early, I understand. But sandwiches used to be, come in a couple different options. Ham and cheese, turkey and cheese, there's not a lot of variation. All of a sudden, Subway comes in and says, you can have any sandwich combination you want, any way you can do it. So that, for Subway, would mean 37 million different sandwich combinations. Now we know that's impossible, no matter how fast our sandwich artist is making their way down that line. It's impossible for a human to be able to scale. So that's where the robots come in. We've got to find a way to create some sort of automation within this process that can help us move that thing along and be more impactful and more real time. And so back to this example. So that 80 million number continues to be kind of our gold standard. We're not there yet, but we're making huge strides to get there. And the way we're doing that is really starting to create in those real-time moments this kind of fragment approach where we can take those triggers that we're seeing in the market, add in the data that we understand about that customer segmentation, and put those pieces together real-time to pump out messaging for them in the most effective way that we possibly can. Now, obviously, there's different scales of this based on where we are within that purchasing funnel. But for us, this is a huge opportunity for us to be able to hit that real time. And so from our perspective, this is literally that combination of how we take that data insight and add creativity to it to deliver on what we want to see from a customer experience perspective. And so for us, this has been hugely impactful and something that we're just starting to scratch the surface on and looking forward to grow more and more. And hopefully have some conversations with you guys here while over some of these events. So thank you.
Thanks, Andy. We have time for questions, Andy. And when you have questions, please tell us who you are and who you're with, so everybody gets to meet you.
Hello, my name is Martha. I have a question. What tools are you using to make all these data attribution of the personas and get to manage all these big personalized emails?
Great question. Thank you, Martha. For us, so this is a journey we've been on for a couple years. I'd say any off-the-shelf tools that we've come across haven't really been effective for us. So when you talk about in-house versus external, a lot of the tools that we're using we've built as proprietary tools. So we don't have a ton of off-the-shelf components. But I'd say the thing that we've spent the most time from a marketing optimization approach is really looking at connecting the dots between all of our POS triggers and all of those systems into our research group. And then I'd say from the implementation side and from the fragment standardization side, that's probably been the trickiest, basically due to the way that we create the individual fragment components. For us, you know, as a brick and mortar retailer, a lot of our baggage is in you know, our old print insert, which wasn't a very flexible tool. So you know, I'd say 95% of what we do and what we've connected the dots on is what feeds our digital weekly ad experience, we'd call it. And so that's, I think that's probably where we see the most kind of fragment components coming together. And it really is taking the pieces from our website where we can update pricing real time and push that out through those various vehicles. I realize it's not a very direct answer for you, but so it's tricky for us because 95% of what we've built has been something custom internally, which is not the easiest solution, I understand.
Hey, Andy. Jason Wadler from Jimmy Bar. Great presentation, great results. Knowing the effort it takes to move a company this way, my question is, what was the kind of lag time, you know, from the start where you said this is the direction we want to go until you're starting to see the results that you have and kind of the journey along the way, not the customer journey, but the marketer journey to get there? For sure. I actually think some of the internal components of this exercise are probably the most interesting, just because it's something that the whole company needs to agree on. And I'd say from an organization perspective, the data has always been at the root of what we've been. I'd say that's been a core fundamental to Best Buy for as long as we've been able to capture it. It used to be that data really only showed up in our loyalty program. So some people know it as Reward Zone. We've called it My Best Buy for the last few years. But that's really the extent of where we saw that data come to life. And I would say that it was probably, honestly, it was probably 3 years ago that we took on the capital expense to say, we've got to take all these different components from across the organization. Because like any retailer that's grown and acquired brands and built new experiences, we had data living everywhere. And so that exercise alone probably took a year, and I'm maybe cutting a little time off of that. But I'd say that year where we talked about what was possible and what we were trying to do, but we really didn't see, we couldn't implement anything. And so then I'd say 2 years ago was probably the first time that we were able to start communicating internally like this. And so we've probably got about a year and a half under our belt of what I'd say is true implementation on that data. But from an organization standpoint, it was 3 years ago that everybody really locked arms and said, this is a priority. And since then, we've seen that these segments really adopted by the entire corporate culture, which is phenomenal.
Good morning, Andy. Dan Kidd with Research Now SSI. Really good conversation, especially around the email side and the dynamic content. How do you apply that in the paid channel? In particular, how do you identify the unknown behavioral and then the known IDs, tie that all together? Are you using dynamic ads on the paid side? And is that internal or agency?
Great question. So we are using those dynamic components. I'd say it's a combination. Let's see how many of these answers I can dodge. No. I'd say it's on the paid side, we're absolutely leveraging agency partners to maximize those opportunities. But it really is our data that we're porting out to help inform the way that those models are built. We've gotten obviously, PI, like personal information is highly sensitive, and for us as a retailer, especially in this day and age, that's a huge focus for us. But as we think about the ways that we want to maximize the impact of that is basically being able to leverage this Athena database with those external agency partners is a huge part of how we operate. Obviously, you know that not every buy is able to maximize every single one of those components. So I'd say it's a sliding scale based on based on how far outside our own walls we get. Obviously, the biggest impact that we can have are our first-party kind of components, or the closer-in programs like retargeting and things like that. But you know, as we think about resources and where some of that responsibility has shifted, we do a fair amount of that legwork internally, and then leverage our partners to maximize it, take that, make it better, and make it shine in the marketplace.
Andy, I have a couple of questions. I'm probably in that that category of high touch, high tech audience. I'm curious, A, how I got there. How was the original segmentation done? And then, to what degree are your messages being contoured in each case of a specific trigger that might be triggering a message? How much of that content is then contoured to that individual segment as opposed to simply responding to the trigger? I'm curious how much personalization is actually going on within each of the segments.
Sure. So I'd say, so the segmentation, again, was probably a 6-month exercise that went through kind of as any good segmentation would, a handful of different kind of phases. But for us, the things that split those groups aside was a mix of kind of behavioral components that made them different as we look at tech adoption, as well as traditional demographics like household income and things like that. Some of the triggers that set there's a lot of really good groups within there, and so for us, as we looked at that, we wanted to make sure that the groups that we focused on were truly inspiring as you think about the impact on a broader group. For example, as you think about it, if somebody's TV breaks, we still want to be a destination for them, obviously, but to go out with messaging around that is not as inspiring to a broad group of people. So really trying to think of that bullseye group that we could draw people in. So as we got closer in on that segmentation, the way that we split those final groups out were really around our opportunity as a retailer that offers kind of both online and offline customer experiences. And so that's where that true separation started to get, and where those high-touch tech fans started to really coalesce as a group for us. Now the question around how much of that we're able to implement, I think is an interesting one. Going back to kind of the corporate adoption approach, I'd say we've made huge strides across every touch point as a retailer to bring that customer in as kind of the creative brief on anything that we've done. So if we're thinking about a new retail experience, or we're thinking about a website update, or something as tangible as the shopping cart online, we think about that group and ways to continue to evolve those experiences to maximize their appreciation for it. So if that's a level of personalization, that kind of component is happening. As far as the real time, still so much of what we can do is trigger based. Mm-hmm. So that's going to often be the thing that creates the opportunity if we think about it that way. But then the actual message we deliver is highly personalized based on that audience. So I'd say the moment is the trigger, and the HTTF is kind of the creative icing.
I want to round this off. One final question about the retail experience, since for many years one of the big problems was the disconnect, and honestly with Best Buy too, was this enormous disconnect between the online experience and the in-store experience, and particularly the ways in which they not only work together, but the in-store experience was even aware there was an online experience going on.
Real-time feedback.
So talk a little bit, round this out a little bit by talking about how the digital experience and the retail experience are coalescing or talking to one another better, or trying to come into some sort of symphony?
It's a good question, and probably not an easy answer. But the reality is as a retailer with physical locations, we can't survive without addressing that experience. And I think it used to be that we'd say, online is let's just make the store online and call it a day. Like that was kind of a point of view at one point. But as we know, and as we've been able to learn through all of our research and continued testing, is that online experience needs to be a supplementary, it needs to be a complement, and it also needs to be an outright store, depending on how those customers come through. And so I'd say trying to create the distance between that shopping experience for that one person, who's the same person whether they're looking on their phone, they're looking on their computer at home, or they're walking in the store. They're the same person, they're just leveraging that technology different. They don't want to feel like they have to start that conversation every single time, depending on the channel that they're in. So there are kind of retail components that we continue to try to implement that help our retail employees, or we call them our blue shirts, understand more about those customers as they're coming in, so they're better prepared to speak to them. We've also armed them with a lot more technology of their own, which is good. We're a technology company, we should do that. So that they're ready to kind of access everything that the digital experience can bring to bear within that physical environment. So really trying to create this more of a consistent handoff than unique individualized experiences.
Andy Gorski, thanks very much. That was a great opening. Thank you very much.